Okay, so imagine this. I'm standing there, at my husband's funeral, completely numb. The air is heavy with that specific scent of lilies and grief, and I can hear the muffled sobs of his mother beside me. It's a blur, honestly. A gray, suffocating blur of polite condolences, black suits, and forced smiles. I'm just trying to get through it, trying to process the fact that the man I loved, my rock, my entire future, is gone. He died in a car accident, they said. A head-on collision. No survivors. A drunk driver on the wrong side of the road. A senseless tragedy. That's what the police told me. That's what the doctors confirmed. That's what everyone believed. That's what I believed. Until my phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating against my thigh. A stark contrast to the solemn quiet of the cemetery. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another well-meaning but ultimately useless text from a distant relative. But some instinct, made me pull it out discreetly, shielding the screen with my hand as the casket was slowly lowered into the earth. And then I saw it, a message from an unknown number. A single, chilling sentence that tore through the fabric of my reality and shattered every assumption I had about my life, my husband, and the people around me. It read, "I am still alive. Trust no one." I swear to God, my heart stopped beating for a solid second. The world tilted. The grief, already a crushing weight, intensified and mutated into something far more terrifying: confusion, paranoia, and a suffocating sense of betrayal. Was I losing my mind? Was this some cruel joke? Or was it him? My husband? Alive? And if he was, what did trust no one even mean? Tell me, if you were in my shoes, at your husband's funeral, receiving that message, would you have dismissed it as a prank, or would you have felt the cold tendrils of fear wrap around your heart, just like I did? It all started, I guess, a little over 10 years ago when I met Mark. He was charismatic, intelligent, incredibly funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and from that moment on, I was captivated. He worked as an independent consultant, specializing in cybersecurity for high-profile clients, often government agencies or large corporations. It sounded exciting, a little mysterious, and incredibly important. He was always discreet about his work, citing non-disclosure agreements and the sensitive nature of the information he handled. I respected that. I understood that some jobs required a certain level of secrecy. We fell in love quickly, a whirlwind romance that led to a beautiful wedding 2 years later. Our life together was idyllic. We bought a charming house with a big garden, talked about starting a family, and filled our days with laughter, adventures, and the quiet comfort of being deeply in love. Mark was a wonderful husband, attentive, supportive, and always putting me first. Or so I thought. There were little things, I suppose, looking back. Things I dismissed at the time as quirks or occupational hazards. He was incredibly vigilant about his privacy, always locking his phone, even when it was just sitting on the table. He had multiple burner phones, which he explained were for different projects to keep client information separate. He had a safe in his office, always locked, which he said contained sensitive client documents. He traveled frequently, sometimes for weeks at a time, often to obscure locations. He'd just say, "Work trip, babe. I'll call when I can." And I never questioned it. Why would I? He was my husband. I trusted him implicitly. He was always so good at compartmentalizing his work life from our home life. When he was home, he was present. He was all mine. Our close circle of friends and family adored him. My best friend, Sarah, often joked that I'd bagged a unicorn. My parents thought he was charming and responsible. His own family, though a bit distant, seemed genuinely fond of him. He was well-liked, respected, and successful. Everything pointed to a perfect life, a perfect marriage. Then, about 6 months before his death, things started to shift, subtly at first. Mark became more withdrawn. He'd get lost in thought, staring blankly at the wall, sometimes for minutes on end. He'd jump if I touched him unexpectedly. He started receiving calls at odd hours, always taking them in his office, his voice a low murmur I couldn't quite decipher. He lost weight. His eyes, usually bright and full of life, looked perpetually tired, shadowed by something I couldn't name. When I asked if everything was all right, he'd just offer a tired smile and say, "Just a stressful project, honey. It'll be over soon." I tried to be understanding. I cooked his favorite meals, gave him massages, and just tried to create a peaceful environment at home, hoping it would help alleviate his stress. I even suggested he take a break, a vacation, but he'd shake his head, insisting he couldn't. He became obsessed with security. He installed new cameras around the house, upgraded our alarm system, and even started carrying a small, discreet weapon which he claimed was for self-defense, given the nature of some of his clients. I was concerned, but again, I chalked it up to work-related stress. I thought maybe he was dealing with some shady characters, and he just needed to be careful. I never imagined it was anything more sinister. I truly believed he was just a dedicated professional, perhaps a bit overly cautious. The last time I saw him alive, or so I thought, was a Tuesday morning. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and left for work. He had a meeting in a neighboring city. Later that day, the police knocked on my door. They told me about the accident, the drunk driver, the mangled car. Mark was pronounced dead at the scene. My world crumbled. The grief was instant, brutal, and all-consuming. I remember screaming, collapsing, feeling like my chest was being ripped open. Sarah rushed over. My parents came. Everyone rallied around me. The funeral was arranged in a haze of tears and disbelief. And that brings us back to the cemetery, to that moment, to that impossible text message. "I am still alive. Trust no one." The message was a jolt of ice water. It yanked me out of the fog of grief and plunged me into a cold, terrifying reality. My first instinct was to show someone, to scream, to ask what the hell was going on. But then his words echoed in my mind. Trust no one. Who could I trust? My parents? Sarah? Even the police? If this was Mark, and he was alive, it meant everything I had been told was a lie. And if it was a lie, who was behind it?
And why?
I slipped my phone back into my pocket, my hand trembling. The funeral concluded. I got through the reception, smiling weakly, accepting hugs, all while my mind raced, dissecting every interaction, every glance. Was anyone looking at me strangely? Was anyone watching me? The paranoia was instant, a venomous snake coiling in my gut. I excused myself early, claiming exhaustion, which wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. As soon as I was home, alone in our empty house, I locked the doors, drew the blinds, and pulled out my phone. The message was still there, a stark white text on a black screen. I stared at the unknown number. Should I reply? What if it wasn't him? What if it was someone trying to hurt me, or worse, someone who killed him and was now playing games? But the possibility that it was Mark, that he was alive, was a spark of hope in the suffocating darkness. I had to know. I typed out a shaky reply. Who is this? The response was almost immediate. It's me, Mark. I'm in danger. Don't call. Don't tell anyone. Just listen. My breath hitched. It was him. It had to be. No one else would know to use my preferred nickname for him, a private little inside joke we had. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a dizzying mix of elation and terror. Elation that he was alive, terror at what he was saying. Where are you? What happened? The funeral. Mark, I just buried you. I typed, my fingers flying across the screen. His next message was longer, fragmented, clearly sent under duress. Car crash was staged. They tried to kill me. Knew too much. Had to disappear. Faked my death. You're in danger too. They're watching you. They think you know something. Don't let on. Act normal.
Grieve.
Play the widow. The words hit me like a physical blow. Staged? Faked his death? They tried to kill him? Who were they? My mind flashed back to his paranoia, the security systems, the burner phones, the weapon. It all suddenly made horrifying sense. This wasn't just a stressful project. This was a conspiracy, a deep, dangerous secret he was caught up in. Who are they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. even though he couldn't hear me. The organization I worked for, not clients, not independent. They're powerful and scrupulous. I stumbled upon something I shouldn't have, something that would expose them. I took files, evidence. They found out. They're coming for the files. They think I told you where they are. My blood ran cold. Files. Evidence. He'd taken them, and they thought I knew where they were, but I didn't. I had no idea. He'd never told me about any files, any secret evidence. He'd been so careful to keep his work separate. I don't have any files, Mark. I don't know what you're talking about. I texted back frantically. I know. That's why you have to be careful. They'll watch you. They'll try to get information. Don't give them anything. They'll make it seem like they're helping. Don't trust anyone who tries to get close about my death or my work. Especially not. His next message was cut off. Just a single, ominous period. My heart pounded.
Who was he going to say?
Who shouldn't I trust? The silence that followed was agonizing. I waited, staring at the screen, willing him to send another message, to finish that sentence, to give me some direction. But nothing came. The phone remained stubbornly silent. I tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted again, desperate. Mark? Are you there? Who? Tell me who. No response. It was like he had vanished again, leaving me adrift in a sea of terrifying unknowns. The silence stretched on, making the paranoia grow. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, sounded menacing. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Mark, the man who was supposed to protect me, was gone, or at least in hiding, and I was left to navigate this dangerous new reality alone. I spent the next few days in a state of hypervigilance, alternating between profound grief and simmering fear. I played the grieving widow, just as Mark had instructed. I cried. I accepted condolences. I let Sarah fuss over me, bringing me food and offering to stay the night. But inside, my mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of information Mark had given me. The organization. Powerful and scrupulous. What kind of organization was he talking about? A criminal syndicate? A rogue government agency? A shadowy corporation? I had no idea. I began to review everything, every conversation, every interaction, searching for clues. Mark's office. The safe. He kept important documents there. Could the files be there? But if they were, why wouldn't he have told me before he disappeared? And wouldn't they have already searched it? I decided I needed to get into that safe. But how? Mark had never given me the combination. I tried a few obvious dates. Our anniversary, my birthday, his birthday, but none worked. The safe remained stubbornly locked, a silent, mocking testament to the secrets he kept. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, was particularly distraught. She called me constantly, visited frequently, and often broke down in tears, reminiscing about Mark. She was a sweet, gentle woman, and my heart ached for her. But even with her, Mark's warning echoed. Trust no one. Could I really not trust her? It seemed impossible. She was his mother. But the message hadn't specified exceptions. The police detective assigned to Mark's case, Detective Miller, was also still in contact. He came by a few times, asking follow-up questions, offering condolences, and assuring me they were still looking into the drunk driver, even though the case seemed open and shut. He seemed genuinely kind, but again, the warning. Could he be involved? Or just a pawn? I didn't know who to trust, where to turn. My life, once so stable and predictable, had become a minefield of deception and danger. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was a grieving widow, caught in the middle of a shadowy conspiracy I barely understood, with a husband who was supposedly dead but was now texting me from the great beyond, telling me to trust no one, not even the people closest to me. I had to find those files, whatever they were, and I had to figure out who they were, and most importantly, I had to find Mark. But how? Every step felt like walking through quicksand. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have tried to go to the authorities, despite Mark's warning? Or would you have tried to investigate on your own, risking everything? I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for them to come for me, or for Mark to magically reappear. I had to act. My first target was Mark's office, specifically that safe. I tried to remember anything, any offhand comment he might have made about the combination. Nothing came to mind. But then I remembered a small, framed photo on his desk, a picture of us on our honeymoon, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. It was a favorite of his. He always joked about how the date we took that photo was the day he knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I quickly grabbed it. Tucked behind the photo, taped to the back of the frame, was a tiny, folded piece of paper. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unfolded it. It was a series of numbers, written in Mark's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as I typed them into the safe's keypad.
Click.
The lock disengaged. I slowly pulled open the heavy door. Inside, it wasn't what I expected. There were no stacks of papers, no folders with incriminating labels. Instead, there was a small, well-organized compartment. A few envelopes, a passport I didn't recognize, and a secure, encrypted hard drive. I picked up the hard drive first. It felt heavy, full of secrets. Taped to the top of it was a small, handwritten note from Mark. If you're reading this, I'm either gone or in deep trouble. Plug this into my old laptop, the one in the attic. You'll need the password. It's the date of our first kiss, reversed. A lump formed in my throat. He had anticipated this. He had planned for it. It was both heartbreaking and strangely comforting to know he had tried to protect me. I scrambled up to the attic, dust motes dancing in the dim light. I found his old laptop, a bulky, ancient model he rarely used. I plugged in the hard drive, my hands shaking. The password for our first kiss, reversed. I remembered the date instantly. July 14th, 2 years before our wedding. So, 1407 followed by the year. I typed it in. The screen flickered, then burst to life, displaying a complex, custom-made interface. It was filled with files, hundreds of them, all encrypted. But there was one marked Read Me First. I clicked it. A video file opened. It was Mark. He looked gaunt, his eyes tired, but there was a fierce determination in his gaze. If you're watching this, my love, he began, his voice raspy, then my worst fears have come true. I'm either dead, or I've had to go into hiding. I know this is a lot to take in, but please, listen carefully. The organization I've been working for, it's not what it seems. They're not just a cybersecurity firm. They're a shadow government entity, operating outside the law, manipulating markets, influencing elections, and silencing anyone who gets in their way. They call themselves Aegis. I discovered they were planning a massive cyber attack designed to cripple a rival nation's infrastructure, not for defense, but for profit and political gain. It would have led to countless civilian casualties and potentially a global conflict. I couldn't let it happen. I started siphoning off their data, their plans, their internal communications. I gathered enough evidence to expose them, to bring them down. But they found out. They tried to eliminate me. The car crash, it was an assassination attempt. I barely escaped. I had to fake my death to buy myself time, to go completely off the grid. The hard drive you have contains everything. It has the encrypted files, the codes to decrypt them, and a dead man switch that will release all the information to a global network of independent journalists if I don't check in every 72 hours. I've programmed it to send a signal when the hard drive is accessed, so they'll know someone found it. You're in danger now, my love. They think you have the files, or that I told you where they are. You need to get this hard drive to someone I trust. Someone who can help you expose them before they come for you. And that someone is, he paused, glancing nervously over his shoulder, as if even in a pre-recorded message, he felt their presence. It's Michael. Michael Thorne. He was my mentor, a former intelligence agent. He left the agency years ago after he became disillusioned. He's the only one I trust implicitly with this. He lives off the grid now, but I have a way to reach him. Check the other envelope in the safe. There's a code there, a passphrase. You need to use it to contact him. And please, my darling, be careful. They are everywhere. Trust no one. Not even Sarah. She works for Aegis. She's been reporting back to them. I found out right before I went dark. She's the one who tipped them off about my suspicions. The world spun. Sarah? My best friend? The woman who had been by my side through thick and thin, who had held me as I cried over Mark's death? She was working for Aegis? She was a traitor? The betrayal was a fresh wound, deeper and more agonizing than even Mark's supposed death. It was a dagger twisted in my heart. All those conversations, all those comforting hugs, all of it a lie. She had been watching me, feeding information back to the very people who had tried to kill my husband and were now hunting me. My vision blurred with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of rage, of incandescent fury. I pushed through the shock. Mark's message was too urgent, too important. I had to focus. I replayed the part about Michael Thorne. I grabbed the second envelope from the safe. Inside was a single piece of paper with a cryptic phrase, "The silent observer finds truth in the shadows." And below it, a sequence of numbers that looked like coordinates. I recognized them. It was a remote cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains where Mark and I had once gone hiking. He told me it belonged to an old friend. Now I knew that friend was Michael. I had to get to Michael. I had to get the hard drive to him. But I was alone, vulnerable, and being watched. And my best friend was a spy. The paranoia intensified, gnawing at me. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking danger. Every innocent glance felt like scrutiny. I knew I couldn't just pack a bag and leave. Sarah would notice. Someone would notice. I had to be smart, cunning. I had to play the game. I decided to lean into the grieving widow act even more. I let Sarah come over, let her cook for me, let her comfort me. It was excruciating. Every time she touched me, every time she offered a sympathetic platitude, I felt a fresh wave of disgust. But I swallowed it down, forcing myself to smile weakly, to feign continued sadness. I even asked her for advice about Mark's affairs, subtly testing her, watching her reactions. She was too good, too convincing. It made my stomach churn. I needed an excuse to leave town, one that wouldn't raise suspicion. I remembered Mark had an old aunt, an eccentric elderly woman who lived alone in a small town several states away. She was barely coherent, but Mark had always made a point of visiting her once a year. I told Sarah and my parents that Aunt Mildred was unwell, and I felt I needed to go check on her, as Mark would have wanted. It was a flimsy excuse, but believable enough for a grieving widow grasping at straws. Sarah offered to drive me, and my heart nearly ceased. No, I insisted, forcing a tired smile. I just need some time alone, to clear my head. A long drive might do me good. She hesitated, her eyes studying me for a moment too long, a flicker of something unreadable in them. But she eventually relented. That night, I meticulously planned my escape. I packed a small bag with essentials, making sure to include the hard drive, carefully hidden within a thick book. I left a note for my parents, saying I'd call when I got there. I took Mark's old, unassuming car, the one he rarely used, hoping it would be less noticeable. As I drove away in the dead of night, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I was finally taking action, finally fighting back. The drive was long and arduous. I kept looking in my rearview mirror, convinced I was being followed. Every car that lingered behind me for too long sent my heart racing. I drove for 2 days, taking obscure back roads, avoiding major highways, stopping only for gas and meager rations, and sleeping in cheap, anonymous motels. I never called anyone, not even my parents. I was completely off the grid, just like Mark. Finally, I reached the general vicinity of the coordinates. The roads became dirt tracks, winding deeper and deeper into the wilderness. The air grew colder, the trees denser. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of tires on gravel. I found the hidden turnoff, barely visible, and followed it until I saw a small, rustic cabin nestled among the towering pines. It looked exactly as Mark had described. I parked the car some distance away and approached on foot, the hard drive clutched tightly in my hand. As I got closer, I saw a wisp of smoke curling from the chimney. Someone was home. My heart pounded. This was it. The moment of truth. I knocked on the wooden door, my voice shaky as I called out the passphrase, "The silent observer finds truth in the shadows." The door creaked open slowly. A man stood there, tall and lean, with a weathered face, piercing blue eyes, and a full, silver beard. He looked like a mountain man, but there was an intelligence, a deep weariness in his eyes that spoke of a life lived on the edge. This had to be Michael Thorne. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze intense, assessing. I felt completely exposed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. "I'm Mark's wife," I replied, my voice cracking slightly. He sent me. He told me to bring this to you." I held out the hard drive. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized it. He took it from my hand, his fingers brushing mine, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a spark of hope. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. Inside, the cabin was sparsely furnished but surprisingly cozy, with a roaring fire in the hearth. Michael led me to a rustic wooden table. "Tell me everything," he said, his gaze fixed on me. I recounted the entire story, from the moment I received the text message at the funeral, to finding the safe, watching Mark's video, and discovering Sarah's betrayal. I spoke for what felt like hours, pouring out all the fear, the confusion, the anger, the betrayal. Michael listened intently, his expression unreadable, occasionally nodding or asking a clarifying question. When I finished, a heavy silence descended. "Mark was a good man," Michael finally said, his voice laced with sorrow. "A brilliant mind, but perhaps too idealistic for this world. Aegis is a dangerous beast. They have tentacles everywhere. He shouldn't have gone after them alone." He looked at the hard drive. This could bring them down. But it will also put a target on your back, my dear. And mine." "I know," I said, my voice firm. "But I have to do this. For Mark. For justice. I can't let them get away with it." Michael nodded slowly. "You have his courage.
All right.
We'll work together. First, we need to verify this data, decrypt it. Then we'll find a way to release it safely, without putting ourselves in further danger." We spent the next several days hunkered down in the cabin. Michael, with his vast knowledge of cybersecurity and intelligence, began to painstakingly decrypt the files on the hard drive. It was a slow, meticulous process. As he worked, I learned more about Aegis, about Mark's mission, about the global network of journalists Michael planned to use for the release. He explained the dead man switch, how it worked, and why it was crucial to Mark's plan. He also explained the danger we were in. Aegis would be hunting for the hard drive and for anyone who might have it. One evening, as Michael was making progress with the decryption, his old satellite phone, a secure, military-grade device, rang. He answered it cautiously. His face, usually stoic, hardened. He spoke in low, clipped tones, occasionally glancing at me. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "They're on to us," he said grimly. "Someone tipped them off. They know the hard drive was accessed. They're tracking the signal. They'll be here within a day, maybe less." My blood ran cold. "Sarah," I whispered, the name a bitter taste on my tongue. Michael nodded. "Most likely. She's probably been trying to reach you, checking your old contacts, and when she couldn't find you, she put 2 and 2 together." We had to move fast. Michael had a backup plan, a contingency for such a scenario. A network of safe houses, an encrypted communication channel to the journalists. But it meant leaving the cabin, going deeper into hiding. We spent the night frantically preparing. Michael copied the decrypted files onto several smaller, easily concealable drives. He showed me how to use the secure communication channels, how to send the final release signal. "If anything happens to me," he said, his eyes serious, "you have to complete Mark's mission. Get these files out. Don't hesitate." Just as dawn was breaking, casting long shadows through the trees, we heard the faint, distant rumble of vehicles. They were coming. Michael grabbed his rifle, a worn but well-maintained hunting weapon. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his voice calm but firm. We moved quickly, silently, through a hidden exit at the back of the cabin, into the dense forest. We hiked for hours, through rough terrain, dodging through thick undergrowth, listening intently for any sounds of pursuit. The fear was a constant companion, a cold knot in my stomach. I was no seasoned operative, just a woman thrust into an impossible situation. But I was fueled by Mark's memory, by the betrayal of Sarah, and by the sheer injustice of it all.
I wouldn't let them win.
We reached a small, camouflaged bunker, dug into the side of a hill, a place Michael had clearly prepared for emergencies. We hunkered down, waiting. The waiting was the worst part. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the sounds of the forest. Then, a few hours later, we heard them. Voices. The crunch of boots on the forest floor. They were searching. My heart hammered against my ribs. Michael held a finger to his lips, signaling silence. We listened as the voices grew closer, then faded, then closer again. They were methodical, thorough. They eventually found the cabin, and we heard the distant sounds of them ransacking it, their frustrated shouts echoing through the trees. We remained hidden, barely breathing, until the sounds of their vehicles finally faded into the distance. It was a close call. Too close. Michael and I spent the next few weeks living a nomadic existence, moving from safe house to safe house, always staying one step ahead of Aegis. During this time, he taught me everything he could: self-defense, evasive driving, basic surveillance. I learned to be constantly aware, to notice every detail, to trust my instincts. I became a different person, hardened by necessity, sharpened by danger. Finally, we were ready. We had decrypted enough of the files. We had established secure communication with the network of journalists, and we had a window of opportunity. We chose a remote, internet-accessible location in the middle of nowhere, a small, abandoned observatory Michael knew about. This was it. The moment of truth. As Michael prepared the final transmission, I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. We were about to unleash a storm that would expose Aegis, bring down powerful people, and finally, hopefully, bring justice for Mark. I thought about Mark, my brilliant, brave husband, who had sacrificed everything to expose the truth. I thought about Sarah, her smiling face now a mask of deceit. And I thought about myself, the woman I had been and the woman I had become. The woman who was now ready to fight. Michael gave me a nod. Ready, he asked. I took a deep breath. Ready. He initiated the transmission. We watched as the files, the evidence, the truth began to spread across the globe, sent to every corner of the independent press. It was a slow, methodical process designed to be unstoppable once initiated. We saw confirmation messages, receipts of data, as the journalists began to receive the files. The dead man's switch, Mark's final failsafe, had been activated. The world was about to learn the truth about Aegis. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. News outlets across the globe began to publish the story, detailing Aegis's shadowy operations, their illicit activities, their crimes. The exposé was massive, unprecedented.
Governments were forced to react.
Investigations were launched. Arrests were made. The entire organization began to crumble under the weight of the undeniable evidence. We watched it all unfold from another safe house, a small, anonymous apartment in a bustling city, blending into the background. Michael and I were still in hiding, but now we were watching from a position of strength, not fear. We saw reports of Sarah's arrest, along with dozens of other Aegis operatives. The betrayal still stung, but it was overshadowed by a sense of vindication. Justice was being served. And then, one day, I received another message from an unknown number. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Mark. It's done, my love. Thank you. I saw it all. I'm safe now. I'll be in touch when I can. Don't worry. I'm coming home. My vision blurred with tears, but this time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. He was safe. He was coming home. The nightmare was finally over. The path back to a normal life was long and complicated. Mark had to remain in hiding for a while longer, working with authorities to provide further evidence against Aegis, ensuring their complete dismantling. But eventually, he was able to return, his name cleared, his death officially acknowledged as a staged event for his protection. Our reunion was everything I had dreamed of, a culmination of months of fear, loss, and desperate hope. We embraced for what felt like an eternity, tears streaming down both our faces. The weight of the world finally lifted from our shoulders. Michael Thorne became a trusted friend, a silent guardian who continued to keep an eye on us, ensuring our safety. Our life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an ordeal. We moved to a new city, started fresh, leaving the shadows of Aegis behind us. The experience had changed us, of course. We were stronger, more resilient, and our bond was unbreakable, forged in the fires of adversity. We learned that trust is a precious commodity, easily given but hard-earned, and that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found in the most unexpected places. This whole ordeal taught me so much about courage, about resilience, and about the deep, unwavering power of love. It showed me that even when your world crumbles, you can find the strength to rebuild it, brick by terrifying brick. So, like this video, if you were on my side, if you think I did the right thing by trusting Mark and fighting for the truth. Subscribe for more stories like this, where ordinary people face extraordinary circumstances. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done differently? Who would you have trusted? I'll see you all in the next story.